Frontiers and Pioneers, in association with Tema LNG.
If I reduce carbon and at the same time I can reduce the cost of electricity, I know that will mean that businesses which currently can't function will be able to develop. Businesses which are now struggling because the cost of electricity is too high or the intermittency in supplies is killing their businesses, those businesses will be able to flourish. And the consequence of that is that people will have more jobs and they'll have better jobs and they'll be paid more.
Hello and welcome to LNG TV and today's episode of Frontiers and Pioneers. I'm Hannah Jackson and I'm here with Adam Spry. And it is our honour to welcome Kwaku Boakye-Adjei, founder and managing director of Tema LNG, Sub Saharan Africa's first LNG import terminal that will provide cheaper, more reliable and lower carbon energy to supply around 30% of Ghana's power demand and its flourishing local industries. Kwaku, we are delighted to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for the opportunity.
Now, for those not as familiar with Tema LNG, it would be good to understand how the project originated and what have been some of its key success factors in bringing the project to life.
Well, Tema was a coordinated effort between myself and the two private equity groups who are the other shareholders, Africa Infrastructure Investment Managers, who came into the project slightly later, and Helios Investment Partners, who were the founding sponsor partners along with myself. So I've been working with Helios for a while, and the opportunity arose to participate in a process that the government was running to identify the most cost-effective way of accessing LNG as a supplement to some of our existing indigenous supplies of gas in the West. So as I've been working with Helios before, obviously my background is in gas. I'd worked previously for BG Group, RWE and Tullow. They approached me to see if I was interested in helping them structure the transaction and also to partly contribute to the financing. And I think that combination of experience in the sector, experience in structuring different elements of the gas chain, and also being a Ghanaian myself, along with the specific kind of understanding of sub-Saharan risk that both Helios and AIM bring by virtue of being both private equity companies and also being African focused, was very important in ensuring that the project was able to deliver the most cost-effective solution to Ghana, which meant that we were given the opportunity and mandate by the government to move forward, along with our partner Shell on the supply side. But also in understanding the kind of structures and capital requirements that would be needed to make a project of this nature successful. So I think that combination has really been key to ensuring the success that we've seen so far.
So you're an advocate for gas and LNG having an important role across Africa long term, but importantly, working in partnership with solar, wind and wider renewables. Why is gas so important, and why is the marriage of gas and renewables so important to the future energy mix, not only for Ghana, but across Africa more broadly?
Well, I think the main reason is that if we're going to get to the low carbon future or zero carbon future that we all kind of aspire to, it has to be done in a manner that encourages people to participate in that process and not resist it. And that's both from a political perspective with governments, but also with consumers. And a big part of that is ensuring that access to low cost electricity is part of that journey. In Sub-Saharan Africa, most of the products that we're using are, for fuel generation anyway, are high in carbon and high in NOx as well. So it's heavy fuel oil, it's diesel, it's gasoline. But the nature of our markets, where people are unable to pay large amounts for electricity, means that we can't naturally just shift to high capex, high intermittency type, so sources of supply like wind, solar, immediately. It has to be a transition. And the consumption levels that we have in Sub-Saharan Africa are quite low. So it gives us an opportunity to grow, reduce our carbon footprint through a transition to fuels like gas, whilst at the same time also deliver carbon savings. Now, if we can do that and encourage people to do that in a manner that allows them to increase consumption, improve their lives, get jobs, then they'll be better aligned with the project. If, on the other hand, we try to impose on them a process that is driven solely by by the objective of reducing carbon, which in some cases would mean that consumptions of electricity would fall and people's lives would be detrimentally affected as a result, then I think we'll get resistance, not just by those people, but also by the governments that are required to implement the policies to facilitate it. So I think gas is key in that sense to getting us to that future that we all aspire to.
So you've already mentioned you obtained investment from Helios, from AIM, engineering and build with Gasfin, Shell as anchor supplier, and Reganosa will run and maintain the asset. How important have partnerships been, and how have you managed to build such a world-class set of partners that's incredibly impressive by anybody's standards?
I think they've all been very important. I mean, Gasfin have played a really important role in defining a solution at the early stages that worked for Africa, worked for Ghana, and I think we've been able to utilize that as a model, technical solution model going forward. So they've been incredibly important. And the flexibility that all of these partners have brought to the table and the creativity in trying to find solutions that are bespoke for a new market, because this is a brand new market. And I think part of the problem in trying to deliver a solution to Sub Saharan Africa has been about trying to put square pegs in round holes, being able to go to these people, to Gasfin and say, look, you need to think out of the box here from a technical solution, because the capital solutions that you put forward are going to significantly impact the economics and our ability to deliver cheap gas. And at the same time, they're going to impact the credit solution, which has to be right for these markets. And then going to Reganosa and saying, look, a lot of the logistics and supply isn't necessarily available here, but we want it to be local content, because the more jobs that we create in country, the more value we can keep in Ghana, the more likely it is that government will support it, and more compelling the story is for the people on the ground. So all of these different elements have been super important. I would add also that the financing side, Mauritius Commercial Bank and DBSA in South Africa have all taken a very bespoke and flexible approach to trying to find a solution. Looking forward, of course, and thinking about the opportunities that could exist if we can solve this problem, because they can see the potential to widen the project to include other markets. But that flexibility has been really important to helping us achieve a solution that works for everybody. And without the flexibility and the interfaces between the parties being so good, I don't think we would have been able to achieve what we have.
So it's a story of partnership, but it's a story of making sure that everyone's working in an aligned way so that the locality, the market, works for it, and that whatever's done works for the market and for those locally, and that has made it a success.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Now, shifting gears slightly, I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about your personal journey. Now, as you said earlier, you started at BG Group as an economist, and you've spent time at various leading oil and gas companies with a focus on Africa, before starting your entrepreneurial journey, culminating in founding Tema LNG. So you've seen and done a lot already, very, very experienced. So what have been some of your defining moments, and what advice would you give to those starting out on their careers?
Well, I think for me, BG was really important. As a place to work and nurture skills, it was excellent. It was a small company, but very focused, with really big ideas. And we had a very important and influential chairman at the time, and chief executive, Frank Chapman, who had a vision of creating a company that was upstream focused, but very specifically interested in gas and monetizing gas. And it gave a lot of young people an opportunity up front to see how big businesses are constructed, are structured commercially, and also executed. And so as a young person, you got immediate exposure to all of the different parts of the gas chain, from the upstream to the midstream to the downstream, in different jurisdictions. So I was fortunate enough to work a lot in Southeast Asia very early on, a lot of stuff in the UK, which is a very mature market. So you saw how you would like it to end up finishing. Then you went to other markets which weren't necessarily as established, but you had a sense of the tools that you could use from other jurisdictions to help kind of fill the gap. And then you went to places where you were starting from scratch. And in each of these environments, the company was very good at understanding what you should look for in a risk-reward balance in order to justify expenditure. So it was a great place to learn. And it was a pioneer in not just the gas space, but the LNG space. And so starting a career at BG, and I think a lot of people have benefit from that, gave you a really good grounding and an excellent perspective in the commercial drivers that deliver successful LNG and gas projects. So that was great. And then moving to RWE, which was a founding shareholder in Excelerate, was great. Excelerate obviously has been an important part of our business in trying to show a kind of effective way of reducing the cost of LNG regasification and bringing LNG to new markets that otherwise wouldn't have been able to access LNG. So those two parts were great. And then as a Ghanaian, I think at that point in my life, wanting to go back to work in Ghana, I'd never lived in Ghana. Wasn't born in Ghana, but I've been in Ghana very often. Wanted to see if I could play a role in Ghana's kind of, at that time, developing oil and gas future. Tullow was a great opportunity because it allowed me to really get a sense of how things were on the ground. You think you know your country, you think you have a good idea of how things work, but you don't really know until you have to do business there. And so that 3 years was great. In terms of the entrepreneurial side, I think when you are deciding to go become, if you do decide to become an entrepreneur and you do decide to start to work for yourself, one of the things you need to be confident in is your own skill set and trust in the decisions that you make. Because in most cases, the job that you're leaving probably will still be around if things don't work. But if you don't give 100% to the opportunity that you're trying to deliver as an entrepreneur, it won't work because there isn't any safety net for you at that particular point in time. And things invariably require you to do things and put a level of commitment in that you don't necessarily have to do in a 9-to-5 job. And the expectations are greater in some cases because people's 9-to-5 jobs and salaries are dependent on you. But I think as long as you have faith in your decision-making, you try and partner with the right people, you recognize that the combination of different skill sets is what's required to deliver a project and nothing can be done on your own. And as I say, you give it 100%. I think, there's a lot of opportunity.
It's interesting hearing the impact a leader, an organization, a culture has and the ripple effect long term. And if we go back with BG, the Sir Frank Chapmans, the Martin Houstons, the Betsy Spomers, to widely regarded really as an incubator of talent and of leadership. And what we've seen a couple of decades afterwards is many ex-BG folk, whether it's yourself, more entrepreneurial, or those that are very senior in larger industry leaders, that ripple effect from day one of a leader and the impact they can have is incredibly important. And actually, I assume you've leveraged that experience and learnings on how to build a culture, how to lead into your own organization, and that would have been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the things that I talk to a lot to the people that work for me is that when I was starting, I was really made to feel as though every contribution I made had an impact on the business. We used to talk a lot about moving the dot. That sounds so cringy at the time, when you're a graduate trainee. But you'd go into these meetings and it would be talking about how do we move the return on average capital employed dot from where it is now to where we want it to be. And at each juncture of a project, every individual person would be explained to them how their contribution helped to move that dot. And so that meant that people were accountable, very accountable for the work that they put in and felt motivated. And so that sense of delegating responsibility to people, but keeping them accountable by empowering them so that they know the contribution that they make to the broader project kind of goal is something that's really stuck with me all the way through my work life and also becoming an entrepreneur.
So we've mentioned a little bit about impact. It must be incredibly nice being able to assemble and build what is an incredibly important venture in Ghana, which will have a material impact locally. What ultimately is the impact when you look back in 10 years that you hope your venture will have had in Ghana? not only at a national level, but to those working locally, those families nearby, those industries that will flourish?
Well, I think every successful entrepreneur, I think, wants to impact lives positively. I certainly do. Those people who work for us, I want them to be able to gain an ability to deliver all of the aspirations that they have for their families, certainly. Personal aspirations too, in terms of achieving what they want from an employment and a job satisfaction perspective. But definitely giving them the options and the opportunity to also change the futures of their families and deliver the aspirations that they have for those people. I think for my country, I would like to be seen 10 years from now as somebody who's helped to drive economic development and help to empower a lot of people who I'll never meet in the same way that I'll empower the people who I employ, in the sense that they're able to meet their own objectives in terms of socio-economic development and goals, but also just generally just trying to improve lives. I think sometimes it sounds a bit cliche, but when you live and you work in Ghana, and you live and you see how people's lives are in Sub Saharan Africa, and then you can create a direct correlation between that and the way in which we consume energy, you think to yourself, well, I can actually make a big difference here. If I reduce carbon and at the same time I can reduce the cost of electricity, I know that will mean that businesses which currently can't function will be able to develop. Businesses which are now struggling because the cost of electricity is too high, or the intermittency in supplies is killing their businesses, those businesses will be able to flourish. And the consequence of that is that people will have more jobs, and they'll have better jobs, and they'll be paid more, and the government will receive more taxes. And I know what, in practical terms, what that will mean to our country. So it's very rare that you're able to make that direct connection between your efforts and the impact it will have on your country. In this instance, we've got the opportunity to do that. So it's really exciting.
Well, Kwaku, that's been absolutely fascinating. I could listen to you all day. So thank you so much for joining us. Absolute pleasure. And we look forward to celebrating Tema LNG's first cargo very soon.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for the time and the opportunities. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kwaku.
And thank you for joining us on Frontiers and Pioneers, and we will see you next time.
Frontiers and Pioneers, in association with Sempra LNG.